Today's episode is sponsored by No Strings Attached e-News, your premier online magazine with interesting and informative articles from lifestyle, entertainment, and news worldwide. Visit the website to find out what's buzzing on nsaen.com. Welcome to the talk show Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. The goal of this show is to provide a learning experience to people of all ages, with guests from various fields in academics, a wide range of industries, and insight into the many forms of art, athletics, and entertainment. We hope you enjoy the show. Award-winning composer, conductor, vocalist, and filmmaker Brooke deRosa is today's guest. Brooke will talk about her career in music as well as her film projects.
Brooke deRosa, welcome to Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.
Hi, thanks for having me, Mark.
It's truly a pleasure. Brooke, storytelling is a major part of all that you do. So what's the genesis of your love of storytelling?
That is a great question. You know, I've just always, I grew up with Disney movies and my parents reading me stories and just really being into things like musical theater when I was old enough. And I just love a good story.
So you love seeing it and you like to tell it also.
I think when I realized that I could tell stories, that was sort of a turning point for me. But I always appreciated a good story. Yeah.
How can someone tell a story through music? Because art is so incredible. You can tell a story through a painting. A picture's worth 1,000 words, but it's also worth 1,000 notes. So how do you tell a story in music?
Oh my. Well, there are so many ways to tell a story within music. I'm in both the film music world and the musical theater and opera world as a composer. And I have to say, they are both very different kinds of things, and they both tell a story. I think in film music, for example, you're supporting the picture and using a lot of different techniques that I can discuss, but maybe will be boring, and to go along and support the picture. And in something like musical theater, you're kind of using what you know about melody and harmony to further the story. So it's always in service of the story.
That's great, because I know you've done songs also, but writing and composing a song is one thing, very difficult, but composing an entire score is something very different. So how do you tackle that type of project?
Well, it all starts with understanding the story and what the story is about and whose journey it is, who are you following, what are the obstacles, and they're all pretty universal at the end of the day. If you've read The Hero with a Thousand Faces, there are a lot of tropes from everything, Greek mythology to Star Wars that are just recurrent and signal to the audience that certain things are going to happen in a satisfying way, I think. So I don't know. Did that anyway? Sorry. I get so passionate about it. I just start talking.
That's why we're here. And I have to tell you that it is magical, because I know I'm near Allentown, Pennsylvania, and the Allentown Symphony once a year takes over the PPL Center, and on the big screen is Star Wars. But the music is not in the movie. The Allentown Symphony is playing the score of the entire movie while the movie's on.
Live to picture. It's amazing.
Isn't that incredible? And just brings you back. Some people are seeing it for the first time. Of course, it came out over 40 years ago. But it's just, I want to start something new that I've never done on my show. You've heard of a grab bag. I want to do a brag bag. So I want you to tell, you've won many awards, and rather than have me talk about them, could you just mention some of the awards and what they meant to you?
I don't know if I have actually won that many awards, but I've done some cool things. I will say I did win Best Music and Lyrics for my very first musical that I wrote, which is called Gunfight at the Not So Okay Saloon, which was basically, I'm in love with Gilbert and Sullivan. And I thought, what if I wrote in the style of Gilbert and Sullivan, a modern, a Western comedy set in the time of around Tombstone. So that was one thing I did that I won an award for. I won an award in college called the John Graham Award, which was awarded to students that were in 2 out of 3 because my school didn't actually have a combined musical theater degree. I'd have a separate music and a separate theater degree. So I actually won that. I was very proud of that. And then in terms of achievements, I recently just made my Carnegie Hall debut. So that was pretty cool in an opera that I wrote, actually. So while it's not an award, I think it's pretty cool.
Right. Well, the other award you mentioned too, plus for your college, is phenomenal because quite honestly, I think for many, many years, and maybe still now, it was pretty much a man's world, composing that way and doing musical scores. And you've definitely broken through and had tremendous success. But you know, you've done so much, and we're going to get into the Carnegie Hall thing in a second. But you've done so much, and I've seen the things you've written, and I've calculated your age. You really should be about 106 years old. So, I don't know how you're fitting it all into
Well, I look good for 106.
Yes, you look amazing. You look marvelous. And it's quite, you're so accomplished in so many things. So how do you organize your time to be so productive?
That's funny. I don't. My husband has a funny saying. He says that he and his organization is like classical, and me and my organization is like jazz. And he's right. I don't. I kind of rotate around on a bunch of different projects because to do one thing all the time would be kind of boring to me personally. I know a lot of people like a routine. I don't. So I just kind of use all those things to feel the excitement for the other things. And they're all the things I do they're related. I mean, it's not like I'm a dentist and a geologist or something, you know, so I can kind of cover a lot of ground creatively really quickly because everything I do is interwoven, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does, except that you say it like I would say pass the ketchup, because some people have no creativity. And, you know, everything else is so scripted. I mean, I taught for over 30 years and it kind of was scripted, the curriculum, but you got to be creative, which is what I loved about it in the classroom. But, you know, I've never spoken to anyone who said, I was thinking, what if I took a Western and made it a comedy and made it like Gilbert's? I mean, that's some heavy duty creativity right there. And that makes me go into what your latest accomplishment is. They say the famous joke, what's the best way to get to Carnegie Hall? Practice, practice, practice. So how did Brooke deRosa get to Carnegie Hall?
Chapter 1, I am born. No, it was just, it's funny because a lot of these things are a series of really random events. There was no actual direct path. I really definitely wanted to do something at Carnegie Hall. And a couple of acquaintances that I know from being a singer, they know that I'm also a composer and that I've also been writing opera and musical theater. And they said, we would like you to commission you to write an opera that we're going to bring to Carnegie Hall. We have a space there. We have a date there. And I thought, great. Yes, I will do this. This sounds incredible. And it was a cool idea and a cool story, and sort of one of my favorite opera genres is the horror opera, the one-act horror opera. I don't know why I keep writing them, but I do. I'm drawn to it. And so yeah, that's kind of how that came about.
And is that the yellow wallpaper?
That's the yellow wallpaper.
What can you tell us about the yellow wallpaper?
It's based on the short story of the same name. And Diana Farrell, the librettist, she was trying to draw a lot of parallels with today's world, because in the yellow wallpaper, the story, it's about a poor woman who has just had a baby and is assigned the Victorian rest cure for women, which is like, go to this place, you can't see anybody, you can't write, you can't do anything creative, and just rest. And she wanted to draw parallels to body autonomy in women today. But it was set period, just like it is in the story, and it was fun.
Well, you know, you mentioned also that you were a singer. So I really think I've interviewed so many people who they're actors, and some of them are up for Emmys and even Academy Awards. And and whenever I talk to them, almost 80% of the time they did something else. Oh, I was a producer first. Oh, I was a writer. And you were a singer. So I guess singing came before the actual composing in a way. But tell me about your singing career or experiences.
Well, actually, I was a pianist first. And I went into singing. I always grew up listening to, my parents thought it was really strange because I would only listen to classical music or film scores. But like you had said, it never really occurred to me that I could go into that field. I don't think it necessarily was because I was female, but I didn't think about it. But I loved performing and I loved singing, and I was in voice lessons when I was like a preteen. And I had a pretty successful career singing opera and musical theater. And then both my mom and some of my friends had said, well, you're composing, you're writing film scores. Can't you compose something for all of us to be in? And that's kind of how that started happening. And then I did my first opera, The Monkey's Paw, and it got picked up pretty easily at a time when I felt that my singing career, I was having to kind of fight uphill a little bit. And so I went with the easier thing. I just took that as a sign from the universe. Maybe this is where I'm supposed to go. So I pivoted, and that's how I got from singing into that. And that's how I started singing.
And this is The Monkey's Paw from the short story?
Mm-hmm. Yes, also a one-act opera.
I was about to say, you really do go dark because
I love it.
I taught that. And I don't know who's scared more the first time I taught that. I taught in the Bronx the first 8 years I taught. I don't know who's more frightened, me or the kids. But I just love that. And you said my parents thought I was weird because I like classical. And I've never told this story in the show before because I never had this opportunity. But when I teach some study skills, there was an experiment about 30 years ago where they had 3 rooms, a lot of light, 3 different rooms. They put plants in each room, watered them at the same amount of water, same time every day, same sunlight. Same speakers, same volume. One had rap music, one had rock music, one had classical. And when they came back 2 weeks later, the rock music plants were dead. The rock and roll music plants were dying. And the classical music plants, not only were they flourishing, but the leaves were like pointing towards the speakers. And I say this isn't to say rap is not good. This is not to say that rock is not good, but classical has its place. And I used to play classical music every Friday, the first 5 minutes when the kids did their journals. And the first 2 weeks I did it, I thought they were going to kill me. And the third week, I started to do it Thursdays and Fridays. They could concentrate better with it. So I think that classical music sometimes gets an uncool reputation when it really is so cool. When the people, the composers, certainly the Baroque composers, wrote with the side of the brain that we learned from. So I love the fact you say my parents thought I was crazy, because anytime you hear a kid, who says, oh, I like classical music, it's few and far between. And I love the fact that you do. When I first went to opera, I didn't know what I was going to see. And then it's just such magic. So I thought to myself, that is so hard to compose for. So I have to ask you, with you said you had, some struggles with singing and getting out there and becoming more successful. And this was for you, the composing. On my show, we often talk about the story behind the glory. So tell us what struggles you had to overcome in order to achieve success in your industry.
Well, a lot. And I feel like I still haven't really reached where I'm hoping to be. I also know you talk about education. I actually only have a bachelor's degree. And by the time I thought about going back for a master's, it was just, I was working. And I actually knew most of the stuff from just working in the industry also. So there's a lot of different struggles I face. I feel like as a performer, and I'm sure I'm not the first person who could speak about this, it really does take a toll to be auditioning all the time. And I'm not a person who likes to travel, and for opera, that's a big thing. I'm kind of a homebody. I don't really like living out of a suitcase and moving someplace every 2 weeks. It's not for me. It never was. And so that was kind of an issue. And then I'd worked for all the places I wanted to work in town, and I thought, and then I just sort of was in a couple of shows where I didn't feel like they were treating the singers very nicely. And I thought, why am I doing this? Myself, I'm getting older now. And, when you're 20, you're just going to go, oh, yes, I want to be part of this. And then when you're 30, you're like, So, and then going into things like composing and conducting, when I started composing, there really weren't a lot of women doing it. In fact, a lot of the mixers and things I'd go to, I would be the only woman. But it was kind of an advantage in a way because it was really novel and no one was doing it. And I even think going into opera and stuff, it's been a natural transition because of my performing background, but that is also not without its challenges. And in fact, I also conduct, and that is a very male-dominated still
Mhm.
field, although it's getting a lot better. But you just get snarky comments sometimes and corrections from people that are technically working for you, and it's a little frustrating. Luckily, as a composer, I've always worked with people that really seem to value that. So I never had any people be inappropriate or anything like that, and I was really lucky in that respect. But yeah, there's a lot of challenges, especially being a woman in the industry, and but that's life.
Well, you mentioned going to mixers, and although art is art, it really is a business.
Yes.
And how important is networking in your musical business?
Networking is absolutely everything. I mean, it really is. And I think there are a lot of people that don't like to have a social media presence. And I tell them I think you should rethink that because I get a lot of work just from being on social media. And you don't have to be disingenuous about it. I was posting funny classical, like really niche composer memes where they were making fun of each other. And, just you can do stuff that you believe in and be honest, I think, online and still work. And I think that is a great tool for networking. Yeah, of course, boots on the ground, going out to stuff. Back when I was going to mixers and things, it was really before the social media had taken over to the degree. It was 2008, 2009, something like that. I think we had MySpace, and basically
Right.
Facebook had just started. I still have a MySpace somewhere. Um, but yeah, and talking to people and letting people know what you're doing and who you are, I think is the most important thing probably. And then you have to obviously have the skills to back it up, but I feel like getting a foot in the door is difficult, and once you're sort of in, you're in.
So true. And you've been in the business for quite a while. So, what advice would you give to a teenager, male or female, who's interested in going into the music business, but more in the composing side and writing songs and things of that nature?
Well, I mean, there are obviously the technical things I would advise them. Learn your theory to the best of your ability, even though I was not great at theory. Um, Network, have a good friend circle. But there's something to be said for just living life. I mean, I feel like having been away from my family for college, as many of us are, you kind of learn who you are as a human. And I think that that's an important thing that has to actually happen for you to be good at your job as an artist and to have a lot of kind of experience to draw from. That's maybe more esoteric. But I think that's an important part of the whole picture too, is to think about your voice and the kinds of things you want to say and the things that you're interested in and drawn to. Um, and yeah, definitely stay in touch with your friends. My husband, for example, he has friends from college that he works with all the time. So, uh, try to find like-minded people to align with and
So true. Yeah, such a good point because, and a great philosophy because through the years, I've actually been able to interview former students who have been quite accomplished in their industry. And that that was reminiscent of what you said about your husband, staying connected with those people because that kind of family or friendly unit is so important to have because every little piece of that will add to your success. And I do want to tap into uh, you're being a conductor. As a conductor, what do you see as your most important responsibilities with regards to the musicians?
you have to really lead. Uh, and there's no way to not lead and be a conductor.
Right.
So you have to kind of have a personality where you're okay to take the reins and you're okay to tell people this is how we're doing it and this is why I think that. Um, I think it's different if you're just conducting something that's concert or symphonic versus in support of for example, ballet or opera. But yes, you definitely have to be someone that people want to follow.
That's because you can conduct an orchestra, you can lead an orchestra. It is the same thing. The words are interchangeable. Tell me about the vibe of performing and or conducting live.
Well, I do get stage fright either way. I think I get more of it as a conductor because you're in charge of more and there's more things that can go wrong. But I would say once you get past that initial 30 seconds or something, it's kind of the best feeling in the world. And I'm always just really happy that I'm able to go out and perform, and that I hope people like it, and I hope that I'm entertaining in some way and that they're gonna laugh if that's appropriate or cry if that's appropriate. And for conducting, I'm just really hoping, I kind of always think about the audience, and because I've been so influenced by things that I've seen and that's inspired me. So I'm always thinking, what is this like from that side of things?
Well, I want to come full circle here, and I want to bring something up that more in a positive light, quite honestly, but something rather tragic. Of course, we all watch the news, and I know you had some very tragic experiences with the Palisades fires, but I'm talking to somebody who's so bubbly and who's so positive, and I'd be remiss if I didn't point out how positive you are and how you can come back from adversity. So what were your experiences in the area then? Friends, family, and people in the area during that time?
Well, it was incredible, actually, the response. I was shocked. I knew that my friends would come through, and they did. We were staying in a hotel in Long Beach with our dog, and my close girlfriends, they came, they brought us, underwear and t-shirts and comfy stuff right to the hotel because we didn't know how to get Amazon to deliver to a room and a thing. But the community response out here in Los Angeles has been huge, especially the arts community. I think I applied for every grant you can get for an artist, and I got some money from all of them, and just the encouragement from everybody has been huge. How can I help? What can I do? There are great organizations that helped replace instruments like Guitar Center. There are all the unions which were able to provide financial assistance. There are a lot of partner programs where they're matching composers with composers. And then just friends of my husband and myself have reached out. Do you need speakers? Do you need monitors? Do you need this? Do you need that? Here's a desk. Here's a thing. And it's kind of a blur, honestly, because there was so much going on at that time. But I had no idea I mattered that much to people, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. Well, that's, you're really the poster child for perseverance, and you've kind of risen from the ashes like the proverbial phoenix. So now that things are much better there in that area, and I believe you said earlier you don't think you've even gotten to where you think you're going to, where you want to go. And I believe that is so true. So it begs the question, what is next for Brooke deRosa?
I do have this musical based on Alice in Wonderland that I wrote with Paige Lehner, who's actually my sister, who's a librettist. And I think it's the best thing I ever wrote, or maybe ever will write. And we did a run of it out here in Los Angeles, and we got some amazing reviews. I wanted to go to Broadway. Not for me. The show is actually just good, and people like it. And I think the show deserves it. So I'm hoping to find, investors and put together some plan and bring that to Broadway.
Wow. Sounds so exciting. So exciting.
Yeah.
Brooke, the time has flown. Thank you so much for joining us today and sharing so many of your inspiring stories. To the viewers, I hope that Brooke's story helps you learn the rewards of immersing yourself in your passion. Brooke, thank you so much for being today's guest.
Thanks so much, Mark.
Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman. To contact Marc, email him at info@lifestorieswithmarchoberman.com or visit him on social media through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and LinkedIn. Thank you for watching Life Stories with Marc Hoberman.